Hello, good morning, everybody. This is Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, I am excited. We are diving into I think it's the final part of this thought progression that I've been working on in past episodes. We started with logic aliasing. That's one of my favorite episodes. Please listen to that before you listen to this. Then we went to the emotion machine. And in the emotion machine, I added a little bonus that I expanded in last week's episode called Garbage In, Garbage Out. And this week, I'm putting it all together. I think it took me a while to get to this point. In my personal life, it took me a while to get to this point explaining it to you. But we are talking about something I'm going to call system coupling today. So, let's jump into it. So this idea of system coupling is highly based on the Emotion Machine podcast. So, please listen to that before we get into today. But, basically, inside of finite element analysis, which I talked about a little bit in the Garbage In, Garbage Out podcast, you can analyze certain experiments in the computer rather than doing them in real life. And that can help you because you can run a bunch of experiments at the same time or really quickly, and it's way less expensive to run an experiment in the computer than it is to actually build a prototype and set it up and do the testing and collect the data and all that stuff in real life. That can be such a hassle. So finite element analysis, or FEA, is like super dope because it's a cheap way to prototype things and really get experimental data without doing anything. It's like a really nerdy way to do a thought experiment. And even within that, it can be very difficult to know what's going to happen, even if you do the experiment in real life, because there's so many different factors going on in the real world that you may not be aware of. So, for instance, if you're trying to analyze the amount of flow that goes through a tube, then you can simulate a tube, and then you can simulate flow going through it. But if that fluid is hot, then maybe as the fluid flows through the tube heats up. And when the tube gets hot, it expands. And now the tube is like a bigger tube. So the flow through the tube is going to change as the tube expands because it's getting hotter. And so this is kind of like two analyses in one. It's like the flow analysis and the heat analysis of the tube. And to all the engineers, I know, I'm butchering this, but I'm trying to make this understandable for everybody, so I'm going to move on. So in this case, in the real world, it's like a little bit of flow, then that heats up the tube a little bit and it widens, and now the tube's a little bit wider, and then a little bit more flow in the wider tube, and then it widens even more, and it's like and both are happening at the same time. And up until recently, in the last 10 years or whatever, you haven't really been able to do analysis in the computer of both of these at the same time. And in real life, it's all these different things. There's the vibrations and the flow and the heat and all these different things, and the pressure is changing. All this stuff is happening. I'm making it really simple by having two things. But the idea that nowadays we can do this thing called system coupling, where I can actually set up a computer simulation that basically takes into account the expansion of the tube and the flow at the same time, is it gives us way more accurate results. It gives us a better picture of what's going on, and it gives us better data. And so I'm bringing this system coupling idea, where we're taking these two phenomenon, or these two machines, these two functions, and kind of tethering them together so that they can do a job that requires both at the same time. If we go back to the Emotion Machine podcast there was this idea that in somebody's mind they have the emotion machine and they have the logic machine. And the emotion machine, if you put whatever data you put in the emotion machine, it's going to process it and then put it out. But if you don't put emotional data in it, because it's the emotion machine, it's supposed to take in emotional data. If you put in some other type of data, like logical data, the machine doesn't know that. It's just going to take in whatever data, treat it like emotional data, and then process it as if it was emotional data. So if you put logical data in it, it's going to kind of just mess it up and print out or put out this garbage data, but it doesn't know that. It just took to it's a machine. It doesn't think. It just took in data, processed it, and put it out. And the same with the logic machine. But sometimes, I mean, it's good to try and say, like, okay, well, I'm going to work and have both machines be good in my head. So when I get logical data, I can put it in the logic machine. When I get emotional data, I can put it in the emotion machine. And then I can process data correctly, and then I can have a good idea of what's going on. I don't really have any garbage data. But sometimes with, like, that idea of flow in a, like, hot flow through a pipe that I was explaining earlier, the kind of data that we get, the kind of information that we get from our surroundings I think is rarely a pure type of data, unless you're, like, reading a textbook or something like that, or listening to music. Most of the time, the information that we get from our environment is a mix of different things. And I'm going to make it simple with just logic and just emotion. But most of the time, like when I talk to somebody, there's some emotion and some logic involved. It's both. It's never just like somebody's like logic, or like emotion. It's like it's both. They're mixed together. They're intertwined. It's like tie-dye colors. It's like swirled together. And so what machine do you put that in? Because it's both. And that's why I think the concept I'm talking about today is, like, to me, what I'm striving for, and I hope that we can strive for as a people, because I think it helps a lot with communication. And that's this system coupling idea where I have my logic machine, I work on it, I make it as good as I can. I have my emotion machine, I work on it, I make it as good as I can. But I also realize that sometimes I don't get data that only goes in one. Sometimes I get emotionally charged logic data. And emotionally charged logic data, if I put it in the logic machine, it'll probably get the logic part okay, but it's mixed with emotion. So it's going to get that part bad. And it's all mixed up, so when it comes out, it's going to be good mixed with garbage mixed up. And I don't know if you've ever, like, tried to eat good food that's mixed up with garbage, but it's garbage. It's not like, oh, like, it's some good. No, it's all terrible. And the same if I try to put that through the emotion machine. So the system coupling is like, I don't know, like, you know, putting cords or wires or tubes and stuff between the emotion machine and the logic machine, and having some software or something like that that lets the two machines talk to each other. It's like the corpus callosum with the left brain and the right brain, and the corpus callosum is a part of the brain that connects those two parts of the brain. And that's how the left side talks to the right side of the brain. And without that, it's like two separate minds. But and actually that's pretty interesting, because without the corpus callosum, I think the creative, expressive part of your mind doesn't really have a way to connect with the. And this is actually, wow, that's actually like exactly what I'm talking about, I think. So look into that if it's interesting to you. But without that connection, a lot of times we're going to misinterpret things, because nothing is 100% pure anything. And it's good to have a system in your head where even if your logic machine is the way more powerful one, or your emotion machine is the way more powerful one, it has some way to talk to the other machine and kind of share the data so that we can have the right machine process the right data at the right time, put it together, and then it comes out as a good product rather than half good, half bad, or totally bad, or garbage and stuff like that. So this gets really complex when you start adding more machines. Like if you add the spirit machine back in, And then it's like you have to balance, like if you're going to try and say, well, how do I do this? It can become very complex if you try to like shove this idea and like make it ultra practical and try to write out steps for your life, because everybody's different, everybody has different experiences, and it's hard to make a one size fits all anything. I'm trying to promote this idea of balance. I'm trying to say that a lot of misunderstandings can come from things like logic aliasing and the garbage in, garbage out kind of thing when you put the wrong thing in the right machine. Something that I think has been on my mind a lot lately is the right information at the wrong time is the wrong information. So there's a lot of little things like that that can subtly creep into here to make it more complex. But this is not to overwhelm you. I'm just trying to make you aware of some certain situations, so if it's happening, maybe you can see it, and that can help you like steer the car back on the road if you're swerving and you're gonna like drive into a ditch. So most of the time I would say it's important to have all your machines on and running and be willing to try and use them, to be willing to try and let each machine talk to each other. And I don't know about you, but I'm not an expert at every machine. And in real life, like, I'm not a plumber. And if my toilet broke, I would call a plumber and he would help me. So there's certain times where, like, I'm super logical, and if I know that I have a problem that's logical and emotional, I might be able to handle the logic part, and I have an emotion machine, but I may need to call a technician. I may need to call IT for emotion and be like, yo, I know you have a way better emotion machine than I do. Here's the part that I'm getting that I think is logical. And you might have to outsource the emotional part, or get them to help you fix your machine or help you update your emotion machine or whatever it takes to get the right answer. And I'm not saying like there's a right answer or there's a wrong answer, even though I made it sound like that, but to help you get to a more useful answer, a more complete answer, an answer that helps you move forward and make progress and make connections and have conversations and have dialogue, that kind of thing. You may need to get help from people. You may need to pause, like, if John is talking to Jane and they're not getting anywhere, but John is like, oh, maybe this is an emotional thing and I'm not too good at emotions. Maybe John's like, yo, this is a little much for me. Can we talk about this tomorrow? And then Jane goes, okay. And then John, he goes and finds his friend Jennifer. And he's like, Jennifer, like, can you help me with this? I feel like you can understand this situation. Here it is. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think about it? And then maybe, like, that's like calling tech support. And maybe if Jennifer's emotion machine is like on point or something, maybe it can show John some stuff that he missed or that he didn't understand correctly. Maybe she can help him. You know, like IT, they don't usually come into your house and fix your computer. They're on the phone and they're like, hey, have you tried this? Or have you tried that? Maybe hit this, and this, and then tell me what happens. And they're helping you learn how to use your machine. So maybe Jennifer can help John learn something about his emotion machine, or give him a little upgrade, or tell him that he's missing this component. And then when he goes back the next day to talk to Jane, he's like, yo, I got to IT, I got my system working better, I got it plugged in right, and so I'm thinking better. I got a better idea of what's happening, and let's continue this conversation. So system coupling, I think, is a very complex idea. Like, in terms of the engineering stuff with the FEA, that's like some people's like whole career is just setting these up. These finite element analysis situations to do system coupling. It's like mad complicated in certain situations, like with spaceships and stuff like that. But I think it's worth it to try and organize your mind in a way where it can understand different types of data, process different types of data at the same time, or at least know enough to know when you need to ask for help, to know when you need to get some IT support, and not be afraid to do that, not be too prideful to do that. Because system coupling is great, but you don't have to do it all in your head. I can work with other people. I can couple my system to someone else's system. It's like trading Pokemon with Game Boys. It's great, and it helps you beat the game. But you need to work with other other people and plug your Game Boy in with the link cable, so that you can like trade your Pokemon and like have a good time. So this, I think, is what I was ultimately driving at when I was talking about logical aliasing, but I thought this was like a little complicated to just start here, and so it's been kind of a journey to get to this point. But this, I think, is like the way I understand this. I think you can talk about this in a lot of different ways, but I am an engineer. I work on my logic machine a lot, and I've never heard it explained like this. So this is my perspective on the perspective, or on the idea. And if this helps you, because sometimes, you hear it 40 different ways and none of those ways make sense to you, but then the 41st way, somebody says it a certain way and you're like, oh, that's exactly right. I get you now. And so this is my way of explaining it, and maybe it'll click with you. If it doesn't, that's fine. If you know somebody that maybe this will help it click with them, maybe share it with them. But yeah, this is system coupling. I hope that we can all grow in a way where we can process different forms of data, where we can disagree and still be friends, where we can not always need to be happy, where I can sometimes allow people to have other thoughts, allow people to challenge me, allow the tension or the conflict inside of conversation. I think that's how we grow. And it's not comfortable a lot of the times. A lot of times it doesn't feel good. But to be patient and to work with people and remember that we're all humans, to work together and try and see if we can find common ground. I think that's what this is all about. These are some techniques that I've been progressing through. Please listen to the quintet, quartet's 5, the quartet, all 4 of these podcasts. And if you can have an epic conversation with this, I would be so glad. Yeah, this has been the Perspective Podcast on system coupling, and I hope it helps you. Anyways, this is Jordan Tremaine, signing out. Have a great day.